Amandalee Sparks Hat, and this is the talk on personal astrology. So if you're there, say hello and let me know if you can hear me. I believe my microphone should be working good. So, personal astrology is a little bit different from the astrology things you read in newspapers, the little kind of blurb they have for each sign. And it's based upon the influence of stars and planets in our lives. Kind of like the moon controls the tides with its energy and gravitational pull. The astrology is based on the same thing. And it's a really kind of old way of gaining personal knowledge. For a lot of people, looking at the night sky, clear night sky, and seeing all the stars, it creates a lot of awe in us. And these forms of astrology have been around for centuries. And some of it has to do with the fact that all things in the universe are connected and in relationship with one another. So there are 12 signs of the zodiac in astrology, and they kind of form a wheel signifying the continuous cycle of life from birth to death, and then cycles also within our lives. The first sign is Aries, the last sign is Pisces, and we just kind of keep going round and around. Astrology is a super deep kind of modality. It's a super deep thing. There's layers upon layers upon layers. And I've been kind of a dabbler and learning about it for many, many years, and I found it super helpful in my life for my own personal knowledge. So that's part of what I want to share with you guys today. So when we look at our birth astrology, we have to run a chart based upon our birth date, time, and place. And then this, through these computer programs, and they apparently used to do it by hand, but I have no idea how to do that. But there's tons of places you can calculate your birth chart astrology for free. And then you get the blueprint of what the sky looked like when you were born, from the place where you were born. And this can tell you a lot of the kind of blueprint of energies that have been set up. The cool thing to know is when you are when you get your birth chart run and you see what it is, it can be a little bit hard to interpret, but you get a direct correlation of where your stuff is placed. If you don't know your birth time, it is a little bit more difficult, but apparently there are ways around that. Which I'm not super aware of because I'm not an astrologer. I'm just a fan of astrology. There are two great astrologers I know in our group who I've had readings with, and we'll talk about them later because they are up for readings if anyone wants one. So astrology, when it's done right, is very personal and about who we each are as individuals. And the three kind of main signs that I wanted to explore today are the sun sign, the rising sign or the ascendant, and the moon sign. And so the sun sign is kind of what everybody knows, and that's the sign people are asking about when they say, what's your astrology sign? That's where the sun is positioned in your chart. So I'm born in late January, and so I am an Aquarius. If you're born now, I think we're in we're either in Virgo or the one after Virgo, which is Leo. I think we're actually in Leo now. So it shifts kind of on around 28 to 30 days-ish. Usually right around the 21st of the month. So when you know your sun sign, and you get your birth chart run, you want to find, you can tell which planets are which sign and which house. It's very confusing, but if you look for your sun sign, your rising, or some people call it ascendant sign, which is the sign coming up on the horizon, and which sign your moon is in. So the rising sign, this is kind of the energy of what you present to the world, the face you present to the world as it is. What? And kind of like numerology, each sign has like in alignment traits and out of alignment traits, which is why it's so useful to know these little bits about ourselves, because then we can recognize what we do when we fall out of our alignment with ourselves. So, rising signs, the face you present to the world. Once you know what sign it is, you can go look up the traits of that sign. You can also kind of Google or search for rising sign Virgo, rising sign Leo, whatever yours happens to be. Mine is, I'm a Virgo rising, and a lot of traits of Virgo are kind of very analytical. They like purity and perfection, and hardcore on the perfectionist tendencies is what I fell into on this. When I was growing up, like, perfectionist was a huge part of my identity, and I didn't even really realize it for a lot of years. Because perfection is not really attainable, and because I wanted perfection and I couldn't attain perfection, I really developed a very harsh inner critic and judge, which was really, really like mean to me. And so learning a little bit about myself and how these energy patterns have set up has helped me to work on diminishing this harsh inner critic I developed from wanting everything to be perfect. So it's helpful to know your rising sign. And then you want to look at the moon sign, because the moon rules emotions in the chart. My moon is in Aries, and Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, so it's got a lot of energy, it's got a lot of like action and intensity. And moon ruling emotions means, if you have a moon in Aries, this often means super intense emotions, which for me is a little bit conflicting with the remote, detached qualities of Aquarius, which is my sun sign, because Aquarians are very they're kind of the behind the scenes lovers of humanity as a whole, but not really good with individual people kind of sign, and are often accused of being detached and remote and unemotional. So you combine that with an intense Aries moon, and it creates weird, interesting conflicts in me. And if you find out what yours are, this can be an interesting thing. So it's a wonderful tool for self-knowledge in this way, because it shows you what's set up. And from my understanding, when we're incarnating here we're gonna get born, we choose both our parents, often our name, and our time, our date of birth. And astrology is based upon your date of birth. So it's one of those kind of fascinating things that I like to think about because I was initially supposed to be born about 3 days earlier, which would have put me as a Capricorn instead of an Aquarius. And for what I'm doing in the world, I really needed Aquarius energy. Hello! Nice to see you. Can you hear me okay? So, lost my place. Where am I in my notes? So it's really good to get a reading with an astrologer who you resonate with, because you can, thanks Shaniel, you can do a lot of learning on your own when you go to, I put some links in the event for this, and I'll put them again in the comments, but I like the site astro.com, and I've recently hit upon an app that is called TimePassages, and this app is really great because you can just, it's so easy to use, whereas the website is a little bit more difficult. But once you put in your name, or not your name, your place, date, and time of birth, it runs your chart and it tells you what all your things are in. So because it looks overwhelming at first, that's why I say look for the sun sign, the rising sign, and the moon sign, because then you know your kind of base overall personality traits and out of alignment traits, as well as the face you present to the world and what's ruling your emotions. Do anyone who's live know their signs of those ones? Put it in the chat if you do, if you want to share. Astrology is an interesting thing. It's kind of looked down upon by a lot of people, but it's kind of an interesting thing based on real science, because it's observing how the celestial bodies are moving. Part psychology and part intuition. Really good astrologers and people who do astrology readings have great intuition, because it tells them how these individual planets and things and stuff and layers of stuff is correlating and acting in our lives. Sun sign is Libra. Cool. Each sun sign has a element associated with it. earth, air, fire, or water. And what's neat about the 12 signs is there are 3 of each element. Generally, signs of each element get along very well together. Aquarius, which is my sun sign, is also an air sign. So Aquarius, Libra, and Gemini are the air signs. And air signs are very much, we're a lot about being in our mind and our heads. And for the most part, whenever I've met another Libra or Gemini, I get along really well with them, kind of that instant rapport. So that's an interesting thing to know about Aquarius. If you look at the people in your life and what their sun sign is and what element they are, it can help you to relate to them better or change how you're relating to them. So aside from those 3 signs, the other really important thing that helped me a lot with astrology was when I learned where my North Node was. Travis is an Earth sign, so it's easy to miss. Yes, it really is. And Melissa is a Virgo. Virgo I know a decent amount about because I have a lot of it in my chart. So I'm just going to put a link in the comments here if you hadn't already gone, because astrology is so dependent on knowing your time of birth, which not everybody knows. If you go to this North Node table, you can find out where your North Node is. And North Node is kind of my kind of view and knowledge of it when I've been communicating with all my teams and stuff is North Node is a lot about the intention of direction we created for our lives as we were coming in and being born, which I think is a really cool thing to know. Because otherwise it's like you're just, if you think about just going on a road trip, if you don't know a direction, if you don't have a destination, you need at least a direction. And if you don't have a direction, you could go anywhere, it doesn't really matter. So North nodes are kind of like the direction of where we're heading, not the destination, but just the direction. Also, if you think about it in a way of, what was a great analogy? Oh yeah, so it's like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to chill, and I'm going to watch a movie on Netflix. And you want to know, what type of movie do you want to watch? What kind of experience do you want to have? Do you want a comedy, a drama, a thriller? This gives you a category which you can then go to and then find what you actually are looking for. It's kind of what the North Node is. So if you haven't already, go find yours, because it's based on some of the bigger stuff, the planets that take a long time to move. So that's why you don't need your birth time for it. For me, knowing the North Node was really a big influence and deal, because I have a lot of planets in my 12th house. Oh, I hadn't mentioned those yet. So one of the other layers of, not only are there 12 signs, there's 12 houses in a birth chart. Each house relates to a particular sign and governs a particular thing. A lot of my planets are in the 12th house, which is a fairly misunderstood house, but really it's essentially about all the affinity for behind the scenes, non-physical, energy healing, intuition kind of things, but very kind of not seen things, unseen things. So having a lot of planets there and knowing that this is a direction of my life I have a little affinity and a passion and a superpowers in. My North Node is in Leo, and Leo is all about being a leader. They're creative, they're powerful, and they're here, look at me and look at what I'm doing, which is kind of the opposite to my shy, quiet personality. So when this got put together in a reading for me, what it kind of meant to when you took these kind of bits and pieces and put them into a sentence, it told me, and the astrologer told me, that here's all these talents and abilities you have, and you're meant to stand up and bring them to the world. Which, for me, who's always been a quiet and shy type of person, was a really shocking, kind of scary, out of my comfort zone, huge thing. But knowing that was kind of an intentional direction in my life has really helped me to take steps and to start to gain qualities to help me do that. If that makes sense. Did anyone find out what their North Node is from that link I put there? You can, if you scroll down on the page, you can put in either in your birthday month and year, or if you scroll down, you can just find it in the chart, because it's based on about half year, every 6 months or so it changes, it looks like. So, North Node won't let you submit. Well, that's silly. Chanel, if you scroll down and just look at the chart on that page, instead of just submitting it, you have to scroll because it starts in the 1940s and then goes to 84, and then there's another table from 86 to 07. So it tells you which sign your North Node is in. Cool. Hey, Amandalee. It's water. So once you know the sign something is in, you can then do some Googling for what it means when something's in that sign. There are a lot, if you're looking at either that TimePassages app or some free places where you can get your astrology wheel done, and you're kind of doing it on your own, just be aware that the write-ups are quite generalized based on many people, so they don't always resonate. A lot of times when I've read what Aquarius means, it hasn't resonated. That's because I have other aspects in my chart that make me quite emotional as opposed to detached and unemotional. Chanel, you are in Aquarius, and it won't let Angela click on the link. Okay, if it won't let you click on the link, just quickly type into a browser if you want to know, or do it later, North Node chart. That's what I did to find that one. So Chanel, Aquarius is very much on, is the kind of shaman on the edge of the village archetype, looking, getting all the knowledge from non-physical and working for the good of humanity as a whole. It's a sign I know a lot because it's my sun sign, and I have a bunch of planets in it as well. So I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, so when we're using astrology for personal knowledge and things, it's again not a thing like it's running your life. Here's a blueprint of energies that are set up that if you're not consciously creating things in your world, here's what you'll fall into as patterns and things. So it's good to know those things, because then you can be more aware when you're falling into them, like, oh shit, I'm doing that thing again. Shit, my perfectionist is up and my inner critic is here. Kind of things is I found very helpful, as well as the whole intention of direction in life. Makes sense? Yeah. Cool. So when we're using astrology in this way, there aren't really like bad combinations, because it's just information. Some people get really into, oh, this means that all is evil and whatever, and like, because astrology has been around for so many centuries and over the years, there's some superstition and stuff attached to it, and it's also really looked down upon as that thing that those weird people do sometimes, right? But used in this way of having an awesome tool, it's very valuable. So I invite you to run your birth chart if you know what it is, and look up your sun, your rising, and your moon sign, as well as the North Node from that chart, and see what it tells you. Oh, and the two people in this group here that do readings, who I've had a little reading from each of them, there is Steph, and I will tag them here, and Shireen. Oh, I can't tag Shireen. And I connected with them before doing this, and they are both willing to do readings if you want to have your stuff read. I will try and tag Shireen, actually. Oh, there we go. Gotcha. So I've tagged them in the video, so you're free to connect with them if you really want a reading. And Steph and Shireen, if you watch this, please put a little poster if you want in the group and let us know what type of astrology readings you do, because astrology is such a deep thing. With the houses, you got your sun sign in a house that's governing things, and there's so many layers of different stuff that I haven't gone to really study it. I've just been a really big dabbler because it's been so helpful in my life. I've learned a lot about my own one, and so that's why I wanted to encourage you to help learn about your own one. So if you found this interesting or helpful, leave me a comment and let me know, either now or later after you've gone and looked up what your stuff is, because I'm also curious, what's your 3 combinations of sun, moon, and rising sign? I actually know a lot of people who are Virgo rising, and we have a lot in common. It's actually kind of interesting. Oh, hello, Allison. I am just finished. So thank you all for being here, those who showed up live, and I'll see you next time. Bye.